The King and the Leather Shoes. Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled a very rich and successful kingdom. His people lived in peace, and his country was known for its wealth and beauty. The king was well liked by everyone, and he worked hard to keep his kingdom in good shape. One day, the king decided to go on a long trip through some faraway regions of his country. He wanted to see how his people lived in different areas and make sure everything was going well. The king's journey was long, and the roads he had to travel on were not smooth at all. They were rough, rocky, and uncomfortable. There were many hills, valleys, and uneven paths that made the journey even harder. The king had to walk a lot, and after several days his feet started to hurt. By the time he reached home, his feet were sore and he was very tired. He had never experienced a trip like this before. When the king returned to his palace, he was in a lot of pain. His feet were covered in blisters and he could barely walk. He went straight to his throne room and called for his ministers and advisors. The king was frustrated. He said, "The roads in my kingdom are too rough and uncomfortable. They hurt my feet and it makes traveling so difficult. I want every road in the kingdom to be covered with leather so that it will be soft and smooth, and no one will ever have to suffer like I did." His ministers and advisors were shocked. They tried to explain how difficult it would be to cover every road with leather, but the king was determined. "I am the ruler of this country. I want to make sure that no one has to suffer from rough roads. We must cover all the roads with leather so that people can travel comfortably without hurting their feet." They knew that it would cost a lot of money to cover every road with leather. Thousands of cows would need to be killed for their skins, and the leather would have to be tanned and processed. The amount of leather needed would be huge. It would take a long time, and the cost would be very high. Despite their concerns, the king was insistent. He ordered his people to start working on the task right away. The workers began to prepare the leather, but as they did, a wise servant of the king, who had served the royal family for many years, thought about the situation carefully. This servant was known for his intelligence and clever ideas. He saw that the king's plan was very expensive and would cause many problems. After thinking about it for a while, the servant gathered the courage to speak up. He went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, I have an idea. Instead of covering all the roads in the kingdom with leather, why don't you just cover your feet with leather? You won't need to cover the whole kingdom, and you can still protect your feet. That way you won't have to spend all that money and cause so much trouble for your people." The king was surprised. He hadn't thought of that. He had been so focused on the problem of the rough roads that he didn't consider a simpler solution. The king looked at the servant and said, "You are right. Instead of covering all the roads, I can just make shoes for myself. I can use leather to cover my feet, and that will solve the problem." The king was impressed by the servant's wisdom. The idea was so simple yet so effective. He thanked the servant and immediately ordered that shoes be made for him. The shoes would protect his feet and make his travels more comfortable, without the need for the expensive and time-consuming task of covering every road in the kingdom. The wise servant's suggestion saved the kingdom a lot of money, and the people were relieved that they didn't have to work on such a difficult project. The king realized that sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. He didn't need to change the whole world to make things better for himself. He only needed to change one small thing: his own shoes. The moral of the story is clear: if you want to make the world a better place, start by changing yourself. It's not always necessary to try to change everything around you. Sometimes the solution to a problem is not to change the entire world, but to make small changes within yourself. The king learned that by focusing on his own needs and making a small change, he could find a solution to his problem without having to make the world around him completely different. The story teaches us an important lesson about life. Often when we face problems or challenges, we think that the whole world needs to change in order for us to feel better. We want to change everything around us to fit our needs, but the real answer might lie in changing ourselves. Just as the king didn't need to cover all the roads, we don't always need to change everything in our lives to make ourselves happy. Sometimes the best way to make a difference is by focusing on the small, simple changes we can make in our own hearts, minds, and actions. The king, after realizing this, became more thoughtful and wise in his decisions. He understood that he didn't need to control everything in his kingdom to be happy. By focusing on himself and making small changes, he was able to find peace and happiness without causing harm or trouble for others. This story reminds us that it's easy to want to change the world around us when we face difficulties. However, true happiness often comes from within. Instead of trying to control everything or make huge changes in our environment, we should look at ourselves first and see what we can do to improve our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. In doing so, we can create a happier and more peaceful life, not only for ourselves but for everyone around us. As the king's wisdom grew, so did the prosperity of his kingdom. He continued to rule with a calm and thoughtful heart, always remembering the lesson he learned from the wise servant. And his people, who had seen their king grow wiser, continued to live happily and peacefully under his reign. The kingdom remained a place of joy, and the king, though powerful, always remembered that the most important thing was not changing the world around him, but changing himself for the better. So from this story we have learnt that if you want to make the world a better place, you don't have to change everything around you. Start by changing yourself, your heart, and your actions. That is the first step toward making a positive difference in your life and the lives of others. For more stories, please like and share this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.